But I wanted to take a few seconds just to talk about one aspect of this, and that's the idea of insider threat. Virgil mentioned a little bit of this. Despite all the angst we have at times about people hacking into our system, an insider can do more damage to you, a malicious insider can do more damage to you and your system than anybody from outside. And at SEI, we've been fortunate to work with the US government, with the law enforcement officials, with the FBI, with the Secret Service, to look at cases of insider threat. We've looked at over 1,000 cases of insider threat, had an opportunity to interview the prosecutors, the defendants, and the people that are put in jail sometimes to what happened, how could they have been detected, how could they have been stopped. One reason we do this is to get a better understanding of how we might prevent insider threat. And as Virgil said, and Farnam too, this is not just a technical problem, it's a problem that involves us, because we're the creators of software, so it's got a human side of it as well. Throughout our studies, when we've looked at the cases of insider threat, and this is actually a part of this, 529 cases, we've really seen three main motivations for insider threat: fraud, sabotage, and theft of IP. Here you can see how this has distributed itself across some of the different industries. In banking and finance, fraud has been the big motivator for insider threat. But in some other industries, it's not. So in fraud, it's a case of siphoning money off. People want some money. It might not be that they get the money directly, but maybe they're building false IDs for people and getting money for that. Okay, that's a type of fraud. The theft of IP is when somebody maybe works in an industry and they've created some great processes, and now that person either decides to take it with him or her as they leave to start a new business, or to share it with somebody who will do this in another business for money. And the final big type of insider threat is sabotage. And this is what happens often you can see in the information technology world, when an individual maybe feels they're not being appreciated enough, or maybe he's getting ready to be terminated, and they decide to leave a bomb inside the software, or to control the software from elsewhere. And this can cause a lot of damage. In the United States, there are companies who have gone out of business because of sabotage to their IT systems. And I'll just mention one case that shows how far this can go. In Australia, just a few years ago, they had a man who was working in the industrial sewerage departments of Australia, putting in what we call SCADA systems, control systems that could be monitored remotely. He was hoping to get a permanent job. He didn't get the permanent job. He was fired and let go after an effort. He still had the keys to that SCADA system. And over the course of the next 6 months, 46 times he opened the sewer lines and dumped sewage into the rivers in Australia. And people had a hard time figuring that out. So it's not just the IT system that's being destroyed. You can destroy other things as well because of the way the IT system integrates with control systems in our society today. Well, that's all I wanted to say as sort of a teaser. I look forward to having some time for questions and answers as we go through the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. So I think all of you have to pay attention to the media, the newspapers, the television stations, and there's hardly a week that goes by anymore that we don't hear about some hacker attack against some organization somewhere on the planet. And the truth is, what we see on the news and what we hear about on an occasional basis is really just the tip of an iceberg. And we know from working in our own organization and from supporting a number of government agencies in the U.S. that attacks against our computer systems are continuous, that the losses are large, and that we have a real battle going on our hands on a day-to-day basis. The people who operate our systems are constantly under attack. They're always looking for new vulnerabilities. They're looking for ways to discover what the attackers have done, how to clean up their systems. And as Virgil said, we got here for a combination of reasons. One of the first ones to point out is the fact that we have this growing dependence on our globally interconnected and converging systems. We've taken what were once independent, disconnected systems. We've merged them all together into what started as the internet and is now becoming a global information infrastructure that allows us to connect everything with everything else. And most importantly, it's not just that we've connected things, we've become highly dependent on those networks, and we've brought things of value into that ecosystem. So our finances are now handled by that systems. Our corporate operations are handled by those systems. Our government operations are handled by those systems. Our military operations are handled by those systems. And so we've brought things of great value into that ecosystem, and they've become a very attractive target for the attacker community. And as we continue to expand that network, make it larger, the attack surface just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so the attackers have more of an opportunity to attack what we value as we put things together. They distribute worms that invade your home systems, sit there and wait for you to enter your passwords and account names for your financial accounts, harvest that information, pull it all together, and they then sell that information to what here are called the middlemen. These are the people who now take that information, bring it together, they collate it, they sift through it, and they make their product available to the second stage of users. So, would you like to go and try to use someone else's credit card information to make fraudulent purchases? You can buy a block of 1,000 credit cards from those people for a certain price. Would you like to pay, maybe not take so much work a little bit less, and make sure that all of those credit cards have been actually authenticated to be real? For a certain premium, you can get a package of 1,000 credit cards with that price tag. How about a little more? Would you like to have the 3-digit code that goes along with that credit card number? Pay a premium, and you can get that kind of information as well. So there's a whole marketplace that has developed for what's harvested by these folks. And then we move on to the second stage of users, and these are the people who actually go after the end targets. They attack the financial institutions, they attack your banking accounts, they attack the corporate organizations, they go after intellectual property, they go after patent applications, they go after product designs, they go after technology of one kind or another. And finally, you see all of that producing the end value to the people who commit those crimes. And on an annual basis, there's a huge economy that's developed. The director of the FBI 3 years ago estimated that the amount of money being lost through financial crime over cyber incidents was greater than all the money being spent in illicit drug trafficking on the planet.
First off, on the government side for critical infrastructure, it's very important that we do the technical things, but we also have to understand, as I mentioned earlier, with insider threat and other issues, that this is the kind of security we've worried about in the past: physical security, clearances for people, all that, to make sure people's motivations are correct. Okay. Now, as opposed to whether it's just a government problem, I don't think people feel like it's just a government problem when their personal information is stolen, when their bank account is compromised, when their credit card is refused because it's been compromised. I've had my credit card compromised twice in the last 10 years, and you feel it when you go and you pay and they say, oh, we got an alert, and they said, call your credit card company right away. Now, in each case, my credit card company protected me from any damage, but it's still a little bit of a shock when you know that you have become a victim. And the most recent time I was a victim was in the US. It was kind of famous. It was in the Target case. Target's a big company in the United States that sells things direct to consumers, a retail shop. And in Christmas time, my wife used a credit card at Target, and all the Target had been compromised by an insider, and 40 million credit cards in the United States were compromised. And so the credit card companies had to issue new credit cards to everyone. So this is an issue that's not just for governments, it's for us. It's for us as individuals, it's for us as organizations, it's for us as peoples of nations. We can't depend just on government to do this. Government will do its part, but we have to do our part too.
There are other things, other steps that we need to take. And the first one is better focus on defense. We have a lot of organizations who try to protect everything from everything. And one of the things I think we need to come to understand is not everything has equal value, and we need to help people understand, educate and train them to decide how to separate their assets, put their strong defenses in the places where it counts the most, and build the strong doors where they need to be built. Similarly, with respect to building technology that helps people do that, again, as Virgil said, there are places where we can make good progress in the short term. We can be very careful about how we protect some very important things, and when we do have the misfortune of being attacked, that we have some way to, first of all, rapidly recognize it, which is not the case today. So we need better intrusion detections and other kind of problem detection technologies. And then we also need better ways to mitigate the problem once it's been detected. So I think that combination of long-term, bringing stronger software development practices to an industry that's only going to come with some external pressure, but in the meantime being better at our defenses and focusing the technologies on things that are critically important.
Something that bothers all of us is the fact that, so there's a recognition that the solution is beyond technology. Now, the criminals are all collaborating, and they have networks in which they exchange information and threat vectors and so on and so forth. However, the good guys are each protecting their own information, their own systems. So how do we go beyond recognizing the fact that there is a need for global collaborations? Otherwise, we're just going to be always running behind the 8 ball. Truly structural ways by which international organizations and governments can share information. This doesn't have to be raw data, because of course we asked this question yesterday of the Director of Research at the National Security Agency, who was here, and we're not expecting to share raw data, but there are a lot of information that could be shared that put us ahead of the game.
Right, that's a great question and a great statement, that this has to be done in an international forum. Because the internet is so connected, the weakest link is the weakest link around the world. So we have to work together. I think you're also right that nations are going to always protect some special information they have, but there's still methods, approaches, techniques that can be shared in general with everyone, and we should do that. That's why it's really important that all countries sort of have an approach to cybersecurity and that they cooperate. We do participate in some conferences and conventions that bring many of the countries of the world together, and I think that's an important thing to do, is to bring all the countries in the world together to share in these techniques.
Remember that there was, in the physical world of war, there was a Geneva Convention where people who attacked each other physically agreed not to use certain kind of weapons, and they're actually ostracized and punished by the rest of the world. And these were countries that competed with each other and were at war. The idea here is very similar. We don't have to stop attacking each other in all areas, but there are certain things that should not be done. And in particular, that's where we need international collaboration, and that's where we need this second Doha round, if you want, the one specialized on cybersecurity. Not to solve all the problems, but to set a limit to force countries to police their miscreants by violating these rules. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is that now we can demonstrate beyond any reasonable doubt that there are some attacks where without collaboration you cannot solve, attacks that affect all of us. So let me give you an example and then I'll stop so that there'll be more questions. So the example that I have is this: there are internet vulnerabilities that cannot be fixed. They are part of the internet design and they are good. Here is an example. Minimum cost routing. It turns out that minimal cost routing makes you a lot of money, makes the internet run, but it creates routing bottlenecks, not bandwidth bottlenecks. So what happens is you find these bottlenecks around the world. We studied 15 countries, including 4 in the Middle East, 15 cities around the world, and we found a way to exploit routing bottleneck to disconnect them. To disconnect thousands of servers. Now, it turns out that these bottlenecks, the links for the bottlenecks, are distributed across ISPs, across countries. Not fixing a single one of them will fix the problem. So here I have a proof that beyond any doubt, you have to collaborate. Even if you can keep attacking each other in other areas, but you like certain areas to be completely off the table. And that's where you need the collaboration.
Companies, as well as governments that are potentially competitors, to collaborate to deal with this major global security and economic issue that we face. I'm going to switch to this side.
Among the slides, something confused me. I saw the picture of Edward Snowden, and I'm not sure if he's a good example of an insider threat when he's telling the rest of the world that everybody is being spied on. So can somebody clarify this for me, please?
Who wants to take this? Go
I'll
ahead.
take it. I think it was my slide.
Yeah.
So Edward Snowden is an example of insider threat, and a very interesting one, because sometimes people think of insider threat as only being people that are their employees. And in Edward Snowden's case, he was not a government employee. You know, he was employed by a contractor, but he was given insider access because of his job with that contractor. So he ended up having, you know, administrative access to everything in the net. And then for ideological purposes, you know, he decided to bring that information out. And it's done a lot of damage. Now, you can argue whether that was justified or not, but it's an example of how an insider can take a lot of can harm an organization and do a lot of damage to that organization.
I actually think that the Snowden affair will have extremely positive consequences, extremely positive for security, for society at large. Now, I happen to disagree with Snowden in many ways. In fact, I don't believe that an intelligent guy like that could go to Russia instead of Brazil. I mean, the beaches in Brazil, and the Brazilians invented the string bikini, and this guy goes to Russia? I mean, total disagreement. No extradition treaty with the United States. I would have gone to Brazil if I were Snowden. But anyway, the point is that that's also an example where the National Security Agency in the United States has not eaten their own dog food. So this agency wrote the book on trusted facility management in the late 80s, namely the book on how to manage secure facilities, how to audit, and all that. And I can tell you in full authority that they did, because I wrote it for them. It's all the net now, you can see, right? It's one of the Rainbow series. They have not been using it in this case. They did not do enough audit. They have not looked at the audit logs, and when they did, were socially engineered by Snowden.
Mm-hmm. Has it ever been floated to start the idea of trying to provide some higher barriers of entrance by regulating what software gets produced? Kind of like what we do with drugs with an FDA. Can we have something like an FDA-approved software, you know, equivalent, before we allow it to exist? Is that level, I know that would hurt innovation to some extent, but has this been floated? Is that possible? Would that help? I want to download something, and my awareness, just like I would be so careful in consuming a drug, I won't download this OS or this app unless it's software approved.
And the problem with regulation is not that I don't believe in it. I think that security is an externality, and like all externalities, economics have to be regulated. The problem is different, is that they have to be regulated uniformly. The market for software is open. So if you regulate it in the United States, but you don't regulate it in China or Russia or anywhere else, Brazil, you are not going to accomplish very much, because I would like to use the best software there is for my function. I, as a user, I'm not going to look for the seal of approval of the US government or the British government or anybody else. I see what my friends and collaborators are using, and that's what I'm going to use. So regulation is not going to help.
Could you also discuss a little bit the changes you've seen in, I'll say, the software development industry, both good and bad, in terms of security in that same time frame? So as the attackers have changed, how have developers changed?
The problem is we're building so much software, and we're interconnecting it to a level we've never done before, so the software is getting to be more complex. So even though we've solved some of the old problems, some of the original problems with software environments, with good languages, all that, we've created new problems at the high end. And so we're continuing to try to address these new problems. I think we all have to remember that software engineering as a discipline is a very young discipline. You know, sort of started in the 60s, and you know, much younger than civil engineering or mechanical engineering or even aeronautical or electrical engineering. And so it's still in that formative phase. I think that's one of the things that's so exciting about it. And it means students today have an opportunity to change the direction of this business and to make their mark in software engineering, which is a little harder to do sometimes in the more established engineering fields.
About 2006 or 2007, about 80% of medical devices have software controlled in them. So there's a proliferation of essentially information technology in every sector in the economy that's impacting it. But the other aspect of it is, think about the Internet of Things.
Yes.
Think about the fact that now we're talking about literally thousands of companies that are getting into a new industry, if you will, with very little experience in software development. And they're going to be developing essentially the runtime system, they're going to be developing middleware, they're going to be developing application for various kinds of devices that are going to be scaled and connected at levels that we've never seen before. What concerns me the most about the Internet of Things is that we have a lot of people who are going to get into the software industry business, if you will, with very little experience in building software. And that's going to essentially lead to a host of new problems. But this is a trend that we've seen over the past 2 decades. If you want to see where our cybersecurity challenges are going to be, just look at the deployment and adoption of information technology and how it's trending. Look at mobile devices, look at cloud computing, look at social computing. As these things have taken off, we've seen new vulnerabilities and new challenges. And again, we're going to see this more and more. And as you see software become more pervasive in various kinds of sectors in the economy, I think you're going to see this challenge growing. We are in Education City, so I want to ask a question about education and workforce development and ask you to comment on some of the barriers, challenges, and opportunities you see in terms of awareness, education, and workforce development with respect to cybersecurity.
So, of course, I see a lot of opportunities in this area. In fact, it's not just about users' awareness, and it's not just about educating people in the classroom. It's actually producing the tools that enable users to defend themselves. So education also has to take that tack, produce tools that users could use to defend themselves. There is no sense in insisting that users should follow this kind of password rule or that kind of password rule without giving options to all these password rules we invent under who knows what standards. So I think education means more than simply awareness that there is a problem, more than simply telling users to use good password, but it means empowering them to use the tools, empowering the 80-year-old grandmother to use proper tools to defend herself and the family, by the way.
The kinds of attacks that we saw 5 years ago are totally different from the kinds of attacks we see today. And the technology vulnerabilities are coming. So we need better platforms to deliver continuous training to the workforce as it's defending our systems. People need to understand it's not a set of skills you develop and then forget about. It needs to be refreshed on an ongoing basis. We need to develop platforms where people can receive instruction, where they can practice developing their skills, and where they can exercise those skills in a real life situation to give them the understanding they need to deal with problems that have very curious kinds of symptoms when they first appear.
Director General of Public Safety at Ministry of Interior, Staff Major General Saad bin Jassim Al-Khulaifi is here in presence. Thank you for joining us. This speaks for the commitment of Qatar government and the staff from MOI here on the importance of cybersecurity and how much they care about protecting the public. This panel is made possible thanks to the vision of Father Emir, His Excellency Father Emir Hamad bin Khalifa and Her Highness Sheikha Motza. Carnegie Mellon is proud to be part of Education City. We appreciate and we're grateful for all the hospitality and friendship received we received from the community. I thank you, the panelists, Virgil Gligor, Richard Pethia, Paul Nielsen, and Farnam Jahanian for joining us, traveled all the way from Pittsburgh. Thank you very much. And we have another speaker on the 25th. The CEO of Shell will be talking about innovation and energy. Thanks for joining us today. Please join us for some light lunch.